Hey, what's going on guys? Tanmay here for Simple Snippets and welcome back to another video tutorial on data structures and algorithms. And in this video tutorial, we are going to implement the counting sort sorting algorithm. So this is the part 2 of counting sort sorting. So if you've missed the first part, that's where we've discussed the entire working of the sorting by taking an example, by taking a diagram, by dry running that algorithm and understanding visually how the entire algorithm progresses. So if you have no idea about how counting sort works, please watch that video. I will link this entire DSA playlist, DSA course in the video description. Do check that video out. But if you're just here for the code, if you're just here for the implementation, then this video is just for you. Make sure you watch this video till the end. And with that being said, let's get started. If you're new to my channel, my name is Tanmay Sakpal and I do a lot of computer science and information technology video tutorials like computer programming, development, technology talks and a lot more on this channel. So if that's something you're interested into, then definitely subscribe and turn on the notifications to get the latest updates and never miss out on such important topics. Okay, so I've opened up my Dev C++ IDE. That's where we are gonna write a C++ program to implement the counting sort sorting algorithm. And on the right hand side in the black, you can see the entire algorithm that we've discussed previously. We just have to convert this into C++ code. You can use any other general purpose programming language. The algorithm is pretty much going to be the same. And in fact, it is almost in the form of code. So it's easy to understand. We've talked about it in the previous tutorial. So with that being said, let's first get started with the coding. And as you can see, I've already written a little bit of code, which is basically the template for C++ program. We have the int main, which is the starting point of a C++ program. So execution starts from the main function. So since it is int main, I've said return 0 and this is where we have to start with the coding. So we'll create a separate function, user defined function over here on the top. But first, let's set some default things. Let's take the array from the user. So first I'm going to create two variables, int size, initialize it to 0 initially. Then the range, which is going to be 10. So we've talked about this range variable, which is important in counting sort. The range basically tells how many unique elements are going to be there in the array. Now array can have multiple elements and they can have repetitive elements also. But the range specifies those unique elements, and in our case we've assumed that our range is going to be from 0 to 9, which means we have 10 elements and that's going to be the range. Okay, so I'm hard coding the value over here for simplicity purpose. The range is going to be 10. The next thing is we will ask the user to enter the size of the array, that is the input array. Then we will create that array. So for that we have this code. We say enter size of array. We take in the size and then we create int myArray of that size. Now if you are on Turbo C++, this code might not work because dynamically setting the size of array is not allowed with certain versions of C++ with that version of compiler. If you have this Dev C++ IDE, it should work. If not, then you can use the concept of dynamic memory allocation, or for simplicity purpose you can also hard code this size. In our case we are taking this size from the user and then creating my array of that size. Okay, so if user enters 5, our my array is going to be of size 5. Now we have to take the individual elements from the user and store it in our array. So for that we have this code. We say enter size, which is going to be taken from the user. So if it is 5, we will say enter 5 integers in any order, and we'll also specify the range in the range of 0 to 9. Okay, then we will run this for loop from I equals to 0 to less than the size. So if the size is 5, it will run from 0 to 4 because array index starts from 0. We will take the input using cin operator and we will store it in my array. Okay, fair enough. This is easy enough. Then we will print those values that we've taken from the user. We will say before sorting, again run the same for loop from 0 to less than size, but this time we say cout my array and then we take a space, and then we will say cout endl, so the cursor comes on the next line. So this will print the unsorted random array, which will not have any sorted elements. It would be unsorted before sorting. After this we will call our counting sort function, which we still have to create, which will have the entire algorithm. So it would be like counting sort. We will pass the array, we will pass the size of the array, and we will pass the range. So 3 parameters we have to pass. We have to pass the array, the size of the array, and the range. Okay, and I'll tell you why we need this, and we still have to create it over here. And lastly, we will print after sorting, again for loop with 0 to size, and we will print the same my array. So when we pass this my array, in a function, remember in C++ whenever we pass an array, it is passed by address. If you don't know what is passed by address, passed by value, passed by reference, do watch another video which covers that extensively. I have explained these three concepts in detail. I will link that video in the description, or you can go check out my C++ for beginners playlist on our channel. Some important topics are covered over there as well. So anyways, this is gonna be the entire thing in our main function. And the only thing that we have to create is this counting sort function over here on the top. So let's go ahead and create that. I'm going to say void counting sort. It is going to take an integer array whose name we are going to keep as input array. So this is parameter 1 or argument 1. Then we have int s, which is representing size, and int r is representing range. Okay. So this my array will be named as input array when we pass it inside this function. This size will be named as s, and this range will be passed as r inside our counting sort function. Okay, so if you see the algorithm on the right hand side in the black, the first step is to take the input array. This is that input array. Second step is to create an output array of the same size as the input array, right? So let's create that. We've also created the count array with the range value. So if you see the third step, we have to take the range, which is r over here, and we also have to create a count array obviously and initialize the count to 0. So that's step number 4 and 4.1. So that's the first for loop, right? So hit enter over here and run the first for loop from int I equals to 0, I less than range, and we are saying count array of I equals to 0. So we are initializing 0 to all the elements in the count array for the first time. So this is the first for loop. Now step number 5 and 5.1 is another for loop which basically increments the count at that proper index position whenever there is an occurrence of an element in the input array. So remember, in counting sort, we are counting the number of elements which are repeated in the input array. So let's say our input array is of size 5, and in that we have 3 occurrences of the number 1. So at index position 1 in the count array, the value will be stored as 3. So all the elements in the input array are basically mapped to the indexes in the count array. So this is something that we've discussed in the explanation also. So this for loop is basically doing that mapping and counting the number of instances of these unique elements in the input array and storing them at the appropriate indexes in the count array. And that is done by this code, which is for int I equals to 0, I less than the size. So size is basically size of the input array. So we are going to iterate through the entire input array. We will take the first element, we will go to the index position of that element in the count array, and we will say plus plus. So count array of input array of I is incremented. So this one line will do that mapping. So let's say we have 5 elements in the input array and the first element is 1. So for the first time we will take that 1 and go to index 1 in the count array and increment value at index 1 of count array to 1. Okay, let's say the next element is also 1. So we will again come to the index position 1 in the count array and again increment it, and this time it will be 2. So this plus plus is doing that incrementing, and this input array of I is giving or is taking that element from the input array and giving the exact index position in the count array. Okay, so after this entire for loop we have all the counts of individual elements that are there in the input array. Okay, so moving forward, now we have to calculate the cumulative values in the count array. So we have to add the next element with the previous element and store it in the next element, and this is done to give the positions of the elements in the input array to be placed in the output array to make it in a sorted way. So if this is confusing, if what I'm talking is not really understandable, I would again request you guys to please watch the part 1. For those who have already watched it, you guys already know what I'm talking about. But for those who are just here for the code, just understand that we require this cumulative count to get the exact position of all the elements in the input array which are gonna come in the output array. So in the output array we want everything in sorted format, right? So we want to place every element from the input array in the appropriate position, and that position is given with the help of this count array. So for that we need to do the cumulative addition. So that cumulative addition is done by this for loop. Let me just add the comments to individual for loops. So the first for loop is to initialize all elements to 0 in count array. The next for loop is to take a count of all elements in the input array, and this for loop is where the cumulative count happens. So cumulative count of count array to get the positions of elements to be stored in the output array. Now after this for loop obviously will run or start from 1 and it will go to the range. So count array is of size range, right? So if the range is 10, which is gonna be our case, our count array is gonna be of size 10, which will be from 0 index to 9 index. So we are gonna start from 1 because the first element, that is the 0th element, cannot be added with its previous element. We don't have anything before 0. So element at position 1 will be added with element at 0, and then the total will be stored at element 1 only. Then we will move forward. So that's why we are starting from 1 and we will go till 9, which is less than 10, that is the range. And the code is count array of I is equal to count array of I plus count array of I minus 1. So starting from 1, we will say count array of 1 is equal to count array of 1 plus count array of 0, which is I minus 1. And that will be stored in the same I position. So this will give us the cumulative total, which are basically going to be the positions of individual input elements in the output array. And for that we have the main for loop, which is going to run from 0 to size. So 0 to the size of the input array or output array, because input array and output array are of same size. So from 0 to s, on the left hand side we have output array as the outermost array, on the right hand side we have input array. So this is where we are doing the mapping. So we are placing input array elements into output array in proper positions such that the result is a sorted array in ascending order. So what is this line of code? So on the right hand side it is simple. We are saying input array of I. So we are picking one element from the input array, which is going to be starting from 0. So we'll take the first element. On the left hand side we are saying output array of count array of input array. So we are taking the input array element, the first element basically, which is basically the index position in the count array. So we will go to this index position of the count array returned by the input array. Whatever value is there in the count array at that index position, we will do minus minus, and that will give us the index position of the output array where this value has to be stored. Okay, again I have explained this in detail in our explanation part. This is just the implementation, just the code format of the same algorithm that we have on the right hand side over here. And after this for loop completes itself, in the output array we will have everything in sorted format. So we can run one last for loop which will copy all the elements from the output array back to the input array. So copy output array elements to input array. Obviously this will run from 0 to the size of the input or output array, from 0 to s, that is less than s. So input array of I is equal to output array of I, and ultimately we will have the sorted input array. And since this input array resembles our my array, because my array is passed by address, so this my array is passed by address as input array, so it is one and the same thing. So my array will also now be sorted. So let's save this and let's see if things work. I'm gonna go to execute, compile and run. Okay, so things are working fine. Our program ran successfully. Let's enter the size of array. I'm gonna enter 7. Enter 7 integers in any order in the range of 0 to 9. So I'm gonna say 6, 5, 4, 4, 1, again 1, again 1. How many elements have we entered? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we have 3 instances of 1, we have 2 instances of 4, we have 1 instance of 5 and 1 instance of 6. Of course the sorted array should be 1, 1, 1, then we have 4, 4, then we have 5 and 6. Let's hit enter and let's see if this works. Okay, so there you go. Before sorting we have the same array 6, 5, 4, 4, 1, 1, and after sorting we have 1, 1, 4, 4, 5, 6, which means our sorting is working perfectly fine. Now if you've typed this code, well and good. I would highly request you guys that you type it from scratch. If you're a beginner, don't copy paste it. Obviously I'm gonna share this code and all the theory on our official website, link in the video description, you can check it out. But for the first time, do type it yourself for better practice. Go ahead and play around with the different sizes of the array, our sorting will work perfectly fine. Okay, so that's it for this video guys. This was the counting sorting algorithm program. So this is the practical side of counting sort. And this concludes our video over here. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments how this video was. Do share it with your friends. Do check out the DSA playlist. If you are new on this channel, there are many more video tutorials on our channel. Definitely subscribe and stay tuned for the next video. Thanks again. See you in the next one. Peace.